10 kilometers of brake lights. That's what the satellite caught on the morning of June 24th, 2026. A single frozen ribbon of cars stretching back from the checkpoint at the Kerch Bridge. Engines idling, gas gauges creeping toward empty. By the following Friday, the queue had swollen past 2,000 vehicles. Some counts said 2,400. Others said closer to 28. Nobody's entirely sure. And honestly, if you're the one sitting in a 5-hour line with the air conditioning off to save fuel, you're probably not counting either. Here's the detail that actually matters, though. On the other side of that bridge, heading into Crimea, some daily counts showed exactly 0 cars waiting to get in. People don't queue for 5 hours to leave a place they're planning on coming back to soon. This is Crimea, summer of 2026, and it is, by every practical measure, being turned into an island.
Look at a map, and Crimea barely clings to the continent at all. The only solid land connection north runs through the Isthmus of Perekop, a strip of earth just 5 to 7 kilometers wide, pinched between 2 seas like the neck of an hourglass. Everywhere else along that northern edge, you hit the Syvash instead. Locals have called it the Rotten Sea for centuries, and it earns the name. A maze of algae-choked lagoons, salt flats, and mud bank that swallows boots, let alone trucks. 2 more spots along that mess are firm enough to carry a road or rail line. Chonhar in the middle, and the Arabat Spit out east, near Henichesk. That's it. 3 doorways total, connecting Crimea to mainland Ukraine by land. Everything else is water, salt, and rot. Which meant that when Russia seized the peninsula in early 2014, quietly, almost bloodlessly, in a way that briefly made Putin look like a strategic genius back home, Moscow inherited a problem. Crimea wasn't physically connected to Russia at all, not by so much as a dirt track. The fix cost roughly $4 billion. Putin drove the first truck across it himself in May of 2018, cameras rolling, 2 years of construction behind him. 19 kilometers of steel and concrete strung across the Kerch Strait, a road deck on one side, a rail line finished a year and a half later. For a while, it worked exactly as intended, a direct, sovereign, entirely Russian route onto a peninsula that had none. Then the war came back in 2022, and the bridge turned from a monument into a target.
October 8th, 2022. A truck loaded with explosives detonates on the roadway, buckling 2 spans into the water and setting a fuel train alight on the rail bridge behind it. Road traffic crippled for months. Rail back running within a day. Ukraine didn't officially claim it, not for the better part of a year, but everyone understood who'd sent that truck. July 17th, 2023. 2 naval drones, each packed with the better part of a ton of explosives, detonate against the bridge's underside overnight. Another span drops. June 3rd, 2025. This time it's underwater. Charges planted for months against the support pylons, detonated before dawn. Ukraine's security service chief joked afterward that 3 strikes in 3 years made it official, a tradition. 3 hits, 3 years, and each time the bridge reopened, bruised, patched, but open. Which tells you something important. You couldn't actually sink this bridge with what Ukraine had back then. Not permanently. So Russia adapted, banned heavy trucks from crossing at all, pushed the big fuel shipments onto ferries and the overland route through occupied southern Ukraine instead. And for a while, the patchwork held.
Then came 2026, late May. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense unveils a new program, with a name that doesn't leave much to the imagination: Logistics Lockdown. The idea is almost insultingly simple. Forget the bridge. Forget storming the peninsula with troops Ukraine doesn't have to spare. Instead, starve it. Hit everything that moves supplies toward Crimea from up to 200 kilometers out, using cheap mid-range attack drones that Ukraine can now build faster than Russia can shoot them down. Mid-June, Ukraine's defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, goes on camera and doesn't bother softening it. Drones are isolating Crimea, he says. Give it time, and the peninsula effectively becomes an island. Hell, his word, not mine,
is beginning for the Russians on the other end of that supply chain. And the numbers back him up in a way that's honestly kind of stunning. In the first 4 months of 2026 alone, Ukraine's defense ministry signed contracts for roughly 300% more of these mid-range, middle-strike drones than it had ordered in the entirety of 2025. Another $100 million got shoveled toward buying more.
The primary kill zone is a stretch of highway that Russian occupation authorities officially call the Novorossiya Road, the R-280, running down through occupied Mariupol and Melitopol towards Simferopol and Sevastopol. Here's how you know it's actually working, and this part isn't spin, it's from a captured Russian order, signed June 6th, effective the next morning. The regional Russian military command banned the transport of material assets, fuel, ammunition, spare parts, all of it, along both the R-280 and the neighboring A-291 Tavrida highway. In writing, in their own words, cargo traffic on that stretch of road had already fallen from roughly 3,800 vehicles a day to about 1,100 in the space of 2 weeks. That's not attrition. That's a route becoming unusable.
Highways weren't the only target. Out at the Kerch Strait, where the ferries run when the bridge can't handle the load, Ukrainian drones hit oil terminals on both shores, the Russian side and the Crimean side. Storage tanks burning for days, black smoke visible from orbit. 3 of the vehicle ferries that shuttle heavy trucks across that strait got set ablaze on the 21st. Days later, 3 more, rail ferries this time, same supply chain, went up too.
Aksionov, the Kremlin's man running Crimea, announced a total ban on fuel sales to civilians that same day. Not rationing, a ban. Gasoline, from that point on, reserved for the military and essential services only. Whatever that phrase means to the family trying to get their kid to a hospital appointment 3 towns over.
June 24th. Ukrainian strikes hit the Simferopol power station and Sevastopol's main electrical substation in the same wave. Blackouts roll across the regional capital and beyond. Within days, Crimea's rail authority quietly cuts its daily Russia to Crimea trains from 14 down to 7, rerouting every one of them to terminate at a single station near the bridge and busing passengers the rest of the way. Around the same stretch of days, Ukrainian forces separately take out a rail bridge over the North Crimean Canal, and Russian operators cancel 11 more routes outright. Children's camps and youth sports programs across the peninsula suspended for the rest of the summer by decree signed June 22nd. And all of this lands during what's supposed to be Crimea's busiest, most profitable stretch of the calendar.
Tourism had actually been climbing back through 2025 and early 2026, up 10-15% year over year, hotels booking solid, operators bracing for a genuinely good season. Then the fuel crisis hit, and bookings didn't just slow, they collapsed. One tour operator told Russian media that 80% of her already confirmed June trips got canceled outright, along with roughly half of everything scheduled for July and August. Guest houses near Alushta reported 90% of June reservations gone. For every 10 guests they'd expected, 1 actually showed up. New booking volume for late May into early June came in 31% below the year before, 40% below in Sevastopol specifically. And of the reservations already on the books, 79% got canceled in Crimea overall, 71% in Sevastopol. Hotel cancellations, by one report, ran nearly 90% above the same week the year prior. About 80% of Crimean tourists normally arrive by car. You can probably guess why that number matters right about now.
Which brings us back to that 10-kilometer queue. By June 26th, fuel gone, the grid flickering, camps shuttered, Aksionov and Sevastopol's governor jointly declared a regional state of emergency. In effect, they said, until the situation improves, no end date attached. And that announcement is more or less exactly what triggered the exodus. Thousands of residents and stranded tourists deciding almost simultaneously that now was the moment to leave. Whatever the precise vehicle count, 2,400, 2,800, take your pick. The pattern isn't in dispute. Everyone's headed one direction. Almost nobody's coming the other way. Crimea isn't just a tourist peninsula to the Kremlin.
It's a rear base. Depots, airfields, naval infrastructure, garrisons. All of it built up over a decade to support Russia's entire southern front in Ukraine. Every truck that can't get through, every depot that burns, every route Russian commanders quietly ban their own soldiers from using, that's supplies not reaching troops in Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. Stretch a resupply route by even 80 or 100 extra kilometers, and a truck's daily carrying capacity drops by something like a third. Multiply that across an entire front line, and Russia's ability to keep attacking, not just holding, attacking, starts to erode. And then there's Putin, who made this particular peninsula personal in a way he's made almost nothing else in his presidency. He sold the 2014 annexation as an almost bloodless triumph. He drove that first truck across the bridge himself, cameras rolling, like a man cutting the ribbon on his own legacy. Crimea wasn't just occupied territory to the Russian public. It became proof he could restore something Russia had supposedly lost, the thing that helped make him popular again after some genuinely rough years. Watching that same peninsula run out of gasoline, sit in the dark, and empty out through a 5-hour...
The Kerch Bridge isn't just a military embarrassment. It's the symbol souring in real time, on camera, in front of the exact audience it was built to impress. Nobody serious thinks Ukraine retakes Crimea by force anytime soon. That's not what this is. But making it ungovernable, unlivable, unprofitable, quietly turning "we control Crimea" into "we're barely holding on to Crimea," that's a different kind of victory. The kind that shows up at a negotiating table instead of a battlefield map.
Whether that pressure actually forces Moscow's hand or just grinds on through another summer of rationing and blackouts, that's the part nobody can answer yet, including me. Worth watching either way. If you want the next one, mapping out exactly where these strikes have landed, corridor by corridor, subscribe so you don't miss it. And let me know in the comments, does this actually push toward a ceasefire, or does Russia just tighten its belt and ride out another summer?